Hello and welcome everybody to session 2 of day 2 of the Victorian Cleantech Cluster Virtual Expo. It's my absolute privilege to chair this session on how government can enable cleantech sector growth. We've got a stellar cast of speakers from federal, state and local governments to share their experiences, insights and actions. My name is Peter Hansford. I'm currently Manager of Business Development in the Energy Group of the Victorian Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, but I've worked with government and in the private sector in clean tech and renewables for the last 14 years. Before introducing our speakers and panellists, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We, and I in particular, pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm currently speaking to you from Wurundjeri country, but I've previously lived in Yorta country and Yaru country and increasingly learned from authors such as Bruce Peacock of the long-standing sustainable living practices across 40,000 years of occupation. Our keynote speaker for this session was to be the CEO of Sustainability Victoria, Claire Ferres Miles. Unfortunately, Claire's unwell today, but luckily for us, Kate Dundas, who's the Director of Strategic Foresight and Research, can present in her place. Following Kate's presentation, we'll have a panel session where Vanessa Petrie from Darebin, Shire, Ben Gust from the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, and Matthew Stuchbery from Oz Industry will join the Q&A. So to introduce Kate. Kate joined Sustainability Victoria in July 2020. She's a creative designer and strategist who's passionate about bringing diverse groups of people together to make sense of complex problems. She has experience across the public and private sector in strategic planning, sustainability, urban design and business development, which allows her to draw on a mix of tools to deliver results. Kate co-founded 3,000 Acres, a project aiming to get more people growing more food in more places, and 5 Up, 5 Down, a project to tackle social isolation. She also co-hosted Greening the Apocalypse on 3RRR for 4 years. I welcome Kate and look forward to her presentation on the role of the Circular Economy Initiative in transforming the sector. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's wonderful to be here. I'd also like to recognise that I am here on the land of the Wurundjeri people, and I'd like to recognise all of the various lands and traditional owners of where everybody is listening from today. And let's learn from that 3,000 generations of continuous culture. And I've also been reading recently Sand Talk, which I highly recommend to anybody to learn more about Indigenous practice and sustainability. It's a really amazing book. So I'm standing here in replacement of Claire Ferres Miles, who is our wonderful CEO at Sustainability Victoria. And I'm going to talk to you today about CBIC, which is the Circular Economy Business Innovation Centre, which is run as part of Sustainability Victoria. And the purpose of this centre is really to work with industry to think about how we can implement the circular economy in Victoria. I'm going to do a little finger movement to move on to the next slide. So for those of you who don't know what Sustainability Victoria does, we've got a clear purpose, and our vision is to deliver the circular economy in Victoria, and to do that through partnering with all Victorians, so the community, business and industry. Next slide, please. We've got 3 focus areas or strategic goals that we're looking at. One of them is investment and innovation. So we're thinking about how we can attract and accelerate infrastructure investment and innovation to really make the circular economy vibrant and effective in Victoria. So how can we work with the market to stimulate various sectors of the economy? And that's really what CBIC's focused on. Another of our focus areas at SV is behaviour change and education. So we're thinking about how we work with schools and the tertiary sector of the education system in Victoria to think about how we lead effective change at scale. So how do we educate people about the circular economy? How do we think about what the skills of the future are and how we help deliver them? And then our third focus area is community action. And that's about direct action at a neighbourhood, regional and state scale. And an example of that is our new programme around community power hubs, which is looking at working with the community to deliver a network of community power hubs across Victoria. We then look at the impact that we're having across the state, and we use various measures and ways to measure our impact, and one of those is the Sustainable Development Goals, which you can see listed underneath here. Next slide, please. So a little bit more on CBIC, which is the Circular Economy Business Innovation Centre. It was launched on the 20th of November last year in 2020 as one of the initiatives supported by the transformative Victorian Government's Recycle in Victoria policy. So that's a 10-year policy and action plan to really transform the sector. And the purpose of that is to drive innovation and to reduce waste. And the ambition is to divert most of the materials going to landfill, and some ambitious targets in the policy. Next slide, please. So CBIC was created to support Victoria's transition to a circular economy. And a circular economy continually seeks to reduce the environmental impact of production and consumption while enabling economic growth through more productive use of natural resources. So if a circular economy was to be realised, there would really be no waste. Materials would be cycled back into the system, and we wouldn't be sending anything to landfill. So it's based on 3 principles: designing our materials, products, services and systems so that waste and pollution don't exist, to keep our products and materials in use at their highest value for as long as possible, and ensuring that our natural systems are regenerated. So the circular economy would transform our linear economy mindset, take, use and throw away, and foster innovation and productivity that invigorates existing businesses, creates new ones, delivers more jobs and more growth for local, regional, state and global economies. There's a lot of opportunity with the circular economy, billions of dollars of potential to be realised. So the Circular Economy Business Centre is a virtual centre that provides access to upcoming events, to research, to best practice and to funding opportunities. Each year there'll be a focus area that allows us to address a pressing strategic priority. In this first year, the focus is food waste and the food sector. And the ambition is to halve food waste by 2030. On the CBIC website, you can also share information with us. You can also book a one-on-one meeting with our team to introduce your business or other initiatives. And if you've got an idea about how to transform your business as part of the circular economy, you can get in touch and talk to us about it. Next slide, please. So CBIC's objective is to bring together business, industry groups, research institutions and not-for-profit organisations to create solutions to reduce waste, increase reuse and generate new sources of revenue for Victorian businesses. We see innovation and technology as playing a critical role. CBIC is facilitating the following outcomes. So we're trying to increase access to circular economy products and services. And that's all about building connections. So making it easier for businesses to implement circular economy practices and for consumers to make better purchasing decisions. So for example, we've launched a new online directory, Buy Recycled, which highlights Victorian products containing recycled content. Another example is the rise of the Internet of Things and blockchain applications to help validate the supply chain. For example, the percentage of recycled content in a given product. Another of the outcomes is about material efficiency across supply chains and individual businesses, reducing waste through more efficient production and manufacturing, and encouraging intensive and efficient product use, such as sharing products between multiple users And you'll have seen things popping up probably around your neighbourhood, trying to think about the sharing economy and how we're able to reuse and repair things. We're also looking at new circular economy business models, such as supplying a product as a service. That includes maintenance, repair and disposal, which encourages producers to design their products for longer life and ease of repair, or providing virtual services rather than physical products, which greatly reduces the materials and energy required. And the rise of streaming services for music and other media demonstrates how extremely disruptive these models can become. And we're seeing the rise of things like renting white goods, for example, rather than owning them. We're also looking at new materials markets and how to establish those. Producers switching to making products from 100% renewable materials or recovered waste materials, such as railway sleepers and shopping trolleys made from plastic that would otherwise have been destined for landfill. So you can see this highlighting lots and lots of opportunities for a new type of economy, lots of potential for new businesses, new ideas, new jobs for Victoria. Next slide, please. We've only got 3 minutes left. Try and get to the end quickly. So we've had a really strong response from CVIC so far. We've received 172 funding applications across our 2 main funds, with a total funding request of about $45 million. Now that's well above what we've received before, and it really shows the need for such programs to be helping businesses support their circular economy goals. The opportunity is out there and people are really keen to capitalise upon that opportunity. We've held over 70 one-on-one meetings. So as I mentioned before, you can hop online and book a meeting with one of our experts. And we've heard from a range of really interesting and inspiring businesses and projects across different sectors and scales. Some examples are e-commerce marketplaces designed around the concept of the circular economy, an edible coffee cup, so you can put your coffee in the cup, drink it, and then eat the cup. A company using food waste to create fertilizer, pet food treats and animal feeds using insects, so maggot empires. A group investing in the establishment of an Aboriginal manufacturing hub, fashion companies launching a product to bring their old products and get vouchers in return. So there's lots and lots of interesting things that are happening. And we're continuing to host workshops and roundtables. And a recent one was a roundtable focused on creating a world-class circular dairy sector in partnership with Dairy Australia and Stop Food Waste Australia. Next slide, please. So what you can do now for anybody that's listening, I think we've got about 90 people online. We'd really love to talk to you, to hear about your circular economy goals and any ideas for new business that you might have. You can hop on the CBIC website, register for a one-on-one chat. Our next CBIC event, Smart and Circular, is happening as part of Melbourne Knowledge Week, and that's on Thursday, the 29th of April at 3:30 till 5. And in that one, we're talking about how data and technology can help businesses to reduce waste. So how might we harness the power of big data to think about implementing the circular economy? And if you need assistance to progress your projects, you can contact our free investment facilitation service. So we've got specialised staff on hand that can help you identify investment opportunities. We can also connect you up with the right partners, which is often the trigger point for getting something to happen. We can help identify funding sources at SV and beyond and coordinate across government to realise your project. Next slide, please. So what to look out for? Our 2 main funds through CBIC, which was the RV Innovation Fund and RV Business Support Fund, have both recently closed, but future funding rounds will be announced via the CBIC and Sustainability Victoria websites. So you're able to register to receive alerts and updates about those future opportunities. You can also subscribe to our Recovered Resources Market Bulletin to receive regular market intelligence and circular economy news. And we're also building the CBIC website as we go. So we're listening to feedback from across the sectors, across the market. So take a look, see what's been added, and also always keen to hear feedback, really keen to think about how we can support you and work together with you to realise your goals, to think about opportunities, and to make sure government is being as effective as possible to deliver the circular economy. So thank you very much for listening. I think we're just waiting for Peter to come back. I hope you can't hear my dog snoring in the background. And we're about to welcome our other panelists as well. There's Peter.
Thank you so much, Kate. One, for stepping in at short notice, but two, for a really informative presentation. And I really love the way that SV is so keen to engage with businesses. So for those of you in the audience that are interested in the circular economy, and hopefully that's everybody, lots of opportunities to engage with Sustainability Victoria and profile your projects and learn how your projects can be progressed by talking with some of the staff at SV. Now, as mentioned, we have a Q&A panel to follow, and we've got three great speakers to join the panel. We've got Vanessa Petrie, who is a driver in leading sustainability strategy and engagement at Darebin Shire Council. We also have Ben Gust, who leads the Innovation Fund at the Clean Energy Finance Corporation and responsible for managing Clean Energy Finance Corporation's portfolio of investments in innovation, fast growth business, and the ability to make a significant contribution to the clean economy sector. And Matthew Stuchbery from Oz Industry, who leads the Australian Government's Technology Investment Roadmap, which has been given quite a profile in recent times. So we might get Vanessa, you first, to just give a quick overview of the sort of stuff that you've been working on. And thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. And Kate, it was really exciting to listen to you and what you're doing. So at Darebin, we're driving great social and sustainable outcomes is really fundamental for our work. So we're really focused on, policy to drive that. So we have our climate emergency plan, our new waste and recycling policy, just to name a few, really making sure that we've got a really enabling culture for our staff, really, smart staff to get on and drive clean tech to serve the community, as well as procurement. So, something I'm really excited about to show the power of collaboration and just having them. We're leading a group procurement for a renewable power purchase agreement for 47 councils. So that's where, we're soon and we'll be able to share, but that's, really excited about that and shows just it's the biggest project of its type in local government in Australia and really shows the impact that local governments can have working together when there's that clear, really strong policy and procurement mandate to try and, take advantage of clean tech to better serve the community. In the circular economy space, we are redeveloping a hockey field. And in fact, we were very fortunate to get a grant from the state government via SB. So we are really maxing out the recycling from the demolition of that and also putting in recycled content into all aspects of it. So that the hockey turf, recycling the fencing, putting plastic recycling into the seating and the pads. And we think that's going to really set a benchmark for what you can achieve with construction and rebuild. And they're really practical projects, but they're driven because we've got a really great commitment at a policy level from our council and our community, and just really giving the organisation the space and the support to get on and be really kind of creative. And the other really exciting project, to highlight how this all comes together is we're redeveloping the Northcote Aquatic and Recreation Centre, and that's aiming for a 6-star, which we, best of our knowledge, is the first of its type in Victoria, and the ecological sustainable development focus is on one of them is really strongly on energy and recycled materials and products and transport. So local government, by having really strong policy and enabling culture, I think can really drive some practical and exciting changes in clean tech.
Vanessa, we might just give context to the audience about who we've got joining the panel. We might now move to Ben to just give a quick update on Clean Energy Finance Corporation and what some of the recent developments have been, particularly in the innovation space. Ben, if you can.
Sure. Well, thanks for the invitation to join the panel today, Peter. For those of you who don't know us, I head up the $200 billion Innovation Fund, which is the most active early stage clean tech investor in Australia at the moment. Of the $200 million, we've been operating for about 4 years and invested over 100 million of that in around 20 early stage growth companies that span a broad spectrum of the economy. So we have a broad mandate that allows us to invest into technologies, often very much in alignment with the tech roadmap that I imagine Matthew will speak about soon, but ranging from energy efficiency, renewable energy, and emissions reduction. And you can find details of our portfolio on the CFC's website, but we have investments in companies that range from agricultural technologies, electric vehicle technologies, both vehicles and infrastructure, distributed energy resources, reducing emissions from transportation, use of IoT and energy efficiency applications, and so on. Our rate of investment has recently increased, so we made 8 new investments last year. We've got a portfolio of about 20 companies. We've got an ability to invest from, say, $1 million at the low end up to more than $10 million in a first investment, averaging around $5 million per portfolio company at the moment. Happy to speak more about it in the panel session, but really we feel that we're a great example of a government-supported promoter of the clean technology space.
Now, Matthew, just quickly to you, if you can give us a bit of an update on the low emissions technology roadmap, which I understand you've been heavily involved in, and other related initiatives that may be of interest to our clean tech audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this discussion. I'd also, first of all, like to just recognise that I'm dialing in, or whatever the term is, from land of the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to elders, both past, present, and emerging. And I would like to also clarify that I think you introduced me as coming from Oz Industry. I'm part of the broader mothership, the Department of Industry, Science, Resources, a mothership, and obviously work closely with my Oz Industry colleagues. And so, yes, as you introduced, I manage the technology investment roadmap work. Part of that, I think there's 2 real key components here, which is the annual low emissions technology statements, the first of which was delivered in September last year, and another we can imagine will be coming out at a similar timing this year. And we also manage the Technology Investment Advisory Council, which Dr. Finkel is the chair of, but we also have a range of business and industry research leaders on that, including Shamara Vikramanayaka from Macquarie Bank, Ben Wilson from Australian Gas Infrastructure Group, and Drew Clark, and the list goes on. But we also manage that. The other thing that we do in my team is we work multilaterally to leverage a lot of the international public and private investment needed towards priority low emissions technologies. And I think the key fora that we engage with there is mission innovation, the clean energy ministerial, things like that. In terms of the technology investment roadmap itself, the objective really is to identify the priority technology opportunities, challenges, needs, to give greater focus to Australian government technology investments, and in turn attract a higher level of private investment in these priorities. Obviously, it's really useful to have Ben from the CFC here, because they are one of the primary government investors in clean technology, along with the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, and also at the other end, the market commercial end, is the Clean Energy Regulator. And they've had a role in that space for some time, and I guess most predominantly now in terms of the Emissions Reduction Fund. In terms of the subject, how does government enable industry? I guess what we're trying to do is we're trying to send signals for investment, attract a high level of international investment, and develop partnerships across international supply chains, recognizing that we alone can't drive the cost reductions needed for the uptake of a lot of these low emissions and clean technologies alone. Also through our more strategic lens and working with ARENA CFC to refine our investment priorities. We just want more strategic investment strategies, greater bang for our buck through the money that we put into this sector. But I guess most of all, what we're trying to achieve, the end state with the technology investment roadmap, is develop a partnership with industry, and we need to see a lot more of that. That we want our work, the things that we publish, to reflect the collective priorities and needs of the industry in public investment in the next wave of clean technologies. I might just leave the rest for the Q&A session. Happy to talk about it more.
Matthew. So, Kate, first question to you. Obviously, in the circular economy, it's so critical to have a market for those recycled products. You spoke during your presentation about a new initiative called Buy Recycled. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, but also about some of the products and some of the processes that have led to the establishment of that marketplace.
That's a great question, and one that I don't know much about at all. So we do have a Buy Recycled marketplace, so that is available online, and the intention of that is to help people source recycled products for whatever it is they're doing. And an example of that is using recycled content from buildings, so rubble, which is one of the things that we're able to use more and more of in Victoria. I think we divert about 90% of that from landfill and ends up in road base or in Darebin in some of the capital works projects. And I'm sitting in Darebin now, Vanessa, very excited about our new aquatic centre. So I'd encourage you all to hop onto the recycled directory and have a look at that. One of the big streams of work that we're doing is thinking about how we stimulate end markets. So how do we make sure that once we have the materials flowing through the system, and we don't want to send them to landfill, so we're preparing recycled plastics or crushed glass, for example, or building materials, how do we enable an end market for those things? And that's something that we're looking at through our Markets Acceleration Programme at Sustainability Victoria. So thinking about working with industry to enable those materials to be used effectively. And of course, legislation would speed up that process. But while we don't have a legislation in place for recycled content within new products, then we can work with industry and work with businesses to fund innovations that wouldn't necessarily be viable in a traditional marketplace.
Thank you, Kate. And Vanessa is a customer, obviously, or Darebin Shire is a customer of some of those materials, which is great to see local government taking that sort of leading role. Ben and Matthew, both Ben first and Matthew second. Most of the clean tech audience here today are considered small to medium-sized businesses, and I'm just wondering, I know that you've been funding some large projects, both of you, but could you talk a little bit about some of the opportunities for the smaller business in the clean tech sector? Ben first.
Sure. So the CFC obviously does fund large projects, tens of millions of dollars for the development of, for example, wind farms, solar farms, But I head up the part of the business that's extremely interested in small emerging technology companies. So we will invest, below $1 million in some instances. Some of our portfolio companies we've invested in is being spun out of universities with attractive commercial applications. Groups or teams of a handful of people, a very attractive technology, a market opportunity that they've identified, and an ability to ultimately achieve significant commercial traction. So there is absolutely the opportunity for groups like ourselves to invest into companies at the small end of the spectrum. We also recognise that we've got a bit of an ecosystem building role. So one of the things that we've done is invest into 3 seed stage funds, which will go even earlier than us and write checks as small as $50,000. So I mentioned earlier that we have made about 20, or we've currently made 20 direct investments, but indirectly through our support of 3 seed funds, our portfolio or our fund will end up supporting more than 100 early stage clean technology companies. And then obviously there are other industry bodies like ARENA who are willing to provide grant funding, again, often earlier than what we will invest at, a stage earlier than what we will invest at. So there's a broad number or a wide range of programs, of funds, etc., that are available, and it's growing incredibly rapidly. So my background is 18 years of venture capital investment. The first 15 years really in the in the healthcare space, and then I moved to the clean technology space around 3 years ago. And even in that short period of time, I've seen a significant growth in the level of interest from investors to enter this space. I think everybody recognises the breadth of the investment opportunities and the scale of the transition that's occurring throughout the economy, and it's likely to be a trend for decades to come. So I think we're still very early in that movement, but I have absolute confidence that it's going to continue to grow over the coming years.
Great, thank you, Ben. And I'm sure we will be able to get to some of our details of those 3 seed funding opportunities that you spoke of. Maybe you could put that in the chat or something.
Sure.
Matthew, what about you? What sort of opportunities might there be through the Department of Industry, Science and Resources and Oz Industry for small to medium-sized businesses to participate in?
So thanks, Peter. I guess from my perspective, and I'm very much in the policy space and less so at the coalface and working with Oz Industry with the small and medium businesses. But obviously, from my perspective, there is benefit in I think it's around the information sharing and joining small to medium businesses with others that are operating in this space and with relevant researchers and with relevant funds and opportunities through ARENA, CFC, etc. And one thing that I guess I would ask of you guys and the audience is, what's the most appropriate role for government in that space? One thing you could consider is that through the technology investment roadmap, we have some kind of information clearinghouse that allows others to see who has shared interests that they can connect and I guess leverage others' efforts. So that's one thing I would say is engage with us and tell us what kind of things that we can do that would be useful. We also need to understand the barriers for investment in clean tech at all stages and all scales, right? Part of the work that we're doing is obviously looking at the levers that need to be pulled to remove as many barriers and unleash investment. And so engaging directly with us, I mean, we have a post box. I'm sure I'm very happy for my details to be shared for people to talk to us about those barriers that are experiencing. Obviously, there are legislative and regulatory barriers at the more local, at the state level and at the federal level. But understanding those will help us in our annual refinement of our low emissions technology statements as well. But otherwise, working with the likes of Ben and through CFC and ARENA is the obvious thing to do, connecting directly with them and understanding what the funding opportunities are. I think that's absolutely key.
For policy suggestions, ideas, industry-led, they can approach you. For programs that are up and running already, they can go to Oz Industry or, as you mentioned, Clean Energy Finance Corporation or ARENA.
Absolutely.
Okay, Thanks very much. Now, we might take some, I've monopolised the questions so far. We might share them around a bit. So we've got one for Kate in first instance. Is Sustainability Victoria collaborating or seeking advice from counterparts in Europe where the circular economy is well entrenched? You're on mute, Kate.
The saying of 2020. Yes, very much so. So as we all know, Europe are ahead of Australia when it comes to thinking about and delivering the circular economy. And we're working with lots of different people in Europe. For example, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Zero Waste Scotland, Circle Economy in Amsterdam. And we've learned lots of various different things over the past couple of years through recycling, through developing the Recycling Victoria policy with DELWP, and also looking at how we implement it best. So a couple of things that we've learned are around the importance of the vision and selling the why. So why are we thinking about a circular economy? Making sure that we're telling that story and talking about the opportunities and painting a picture of what that different future might look like. And we think that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation does that really well. So they're able to really celebrate and paint a picture of what the opportunities that exist with the circular economy. Another thing that we've learned is around the importance and value of partnerships, working with industry to deliver the circular economy. And Zero Waste Scotland do that really well. Glasgow is working with the local trading group to think about opportunities locally for delivering the circular economy. So there's interesting stuff happening in Scotland, my homeland. And one of the really important things is evidence base and data. So we need to be able to harness data to measure the circular economy, because if we're unable to measure the baseline, measure where we're tracking and measure where we're trying to get to, we won't know if we've ever achieved that. So there's, again, interesting things happening in the UK. We have a project at Sustainability Victoria at the moment, collaborating with Circle Economy in Amsterdam and Rawtech to think about the metrics around how we measure the circular economy and how we track the progress against that over the next 10 years. And we also have another really interesting project around waste data tracking. So how do we track materials flow as they flow through the system? How do we track all the transaction of waste as it moves across from consumer to whatever happens to that individual piece of waste next? So that's a project that will be rolling out over the next couple of years, and something that's happening in the UK right now. So they're trialling that waste data project now.
One for you, Vanessa. So government investment in clean tech is of course important, but the creation of new markets for some goods and services also needs attention. We heard a little bit about what you're doing in Darebin, but presumably you're sharing your experiences with other local councils. You talked about the power purchasing agreement group procurement exercise. Is there a forum for where local government can actually combine to procure some of these recycled products and create bigger markets?
Yeah, there is. So for climate, the group purchase was really initiated through the greenhouse gas alliances, which I think is one of the best examples of strategic local government collaboration, that we have in Australia. Back in the day when I was a grad, there was, the state government used to run an eco buy, which was, a forum for local governments to come together and buy recycled products. But, buying the circular economy also really drives down emissions. So I think there's a case to look at the circular economy as, climate action as well. So maybe we can use those existing forums. But yeah, I think in Victoria, and I think also, around Australia, local governments are very good at working together to really scale up and get really good outcomes for our communities.
Okay, great, thank you. That's great to hear that that's happening, and I'm sure Darebin will be a leading light in that regard. So question for Matthew. Australia's healthcare sector constitutes 7% of national greenhouse gas emissions. To what extent is the health sector a key strategic priority for investment, either from your group, Matthew, or Ben, if you've got a comment, given your background from the CEFC as well.
Thanks for that question. I guess straight up, the way that we've undertaken our work, we haven't considered the sectors in that way. We obviously look at things in the way that we publish our annual greenhouse gas statements, and so we have electricity, stationary energy, transport, fugitive emissions, industrial processes, agriculture, waste, and land use. Right. That said, obviously a lot of the emissions relating to the health sector will come out of the electricity and stationary energy piece, and the priorities that we have set go a long way to that. In particular, the priority that we've set around long duration storage. So obviously, we have significant investment already in Australia in battery technologies and batteries, which are going to be really good for the daily firming needs that are coming up. But I would put a lot of the healthcare sector needs in that category of quite critical, where there are certain use cases for storage where you might need something that is far longer or significantly longer duration. And that's where we're looking at some of those other technologies. Obviously, there are mature technologies out there, pumped hydro, gas, etc., that provide storage for those particular use cases for hospitals and the healthcare sector more broadly. But there are other technologies on the future, other battery technologies like vanadium flow batteries, salt bromine flow batteries, and things like that. And that's where we're thinking about in terms of those future investments. The other piece, I guess, in terms of stationary energy, is obviously a lot of questions around how energy efficiency plays a part in the technology investment roadmap and annual statements. And we were quite clear in the first one that energy efficiency is just one of those key enabling technologies. And we're trying to think through now how we might give a bit more substance or work with the relevant areas to identify particular technologies or clusters or classes of technologies that might need government efforts to help reduce the costs. My understanding broadly is, though, that there's a lot of those technologies out there, but there are other barriers, not necessarily cost or R&D barriers, but there are other barriers to their uptake and implementation. But happy to take that one further, but perhaps Ben has something constructive to say.
Answer to you, Matthew, in that when we're looking at technology investment opportunities, they're more typically applicable across a range of industries, not entirely focused on healthcare, for example, but to take one example, we've looked at numerous building energy efficiency technologies, which would be applicable to, in particular, large hospitals for significant energy savings, but also other building environments and industries. So healthcare on its own is not an area that we've been specifically focusing and looking for technologies that apply to. But again, to the extent there are commercially attractive and align with our mandate opportunities, we'd love to find them. Always on the lookout. So anybody who's on the call who has an involvement in attractive technology businesses that are in alignment with what we've been discussing today, we'd love to hear from you.
Great, thanks, Ben. Now, Kate, back to you. You talked about the priority for 2021, I presume, is around food waste. That's just a one-year focus, or is that an ongoing focus? And if it's going to be replaced by something else in the following years, can you give us a heads up on what other waste streams might be focused on in future years?
Yeah, so we're focusing on organics at the moment. So lots of the work around CBIC has been working with people in the organics market and thinking about how to stimulate new opportunities and new businesses there. And that's been really successful. There's lots of people interested in doing innovation in the circular economy and organics. That will be over the next 1 to 2 years. And then what's coming online next is textiles. So we know that we have a really pressing issue in textiles, wasted materials in Victoria and globally at the moment. So our focus after organics will be looking at textiles. So if you've got some ideas around textiles, there will be grants coming up in a couple of years' time.
Great, thank you. Now I'm going to give the opportunity to some of the other panelists to ask a question of each other. If any of you have got a particular question from what you've heard from your colleagues, just raise your hand and I'll introduce
I've got one,
you.
Peter.
Yeah, go, Ben.
So look, I am not across the details as much as I should be, but I know that my colleagues in the bigger CEFC have helped invest into a project which I think is a great example of sort of cross-government initiatives, which perhaps Kate or Vanessa or any of you might know more about than I, which involves the collection of organic wastes from, I think it's 8 Victorian councils that are then taken to an organics facility in, I believe, Dandenong, which was supported by the state government, converted into compost, and then the 8 councils who've provided the feedstock are also providing an offtake, so buying the compost produced by that facility in Dandenong and spreading it in their parks and gardens and so on, which just sounds like a fantastic project, supported financially by the CFC, but perhaps some of you know more about that. It sounds like a good example for what we've been talking about here.
I used to work for the Metropolitan Waste and Resource Recovery Group, and I just think it really speaks volumes to the power of group procurement in local government, like what can be achieved to really lift the bar in tech delivery. It should not be underestimated.
Yes, Matthew.
I'm going to be shameless and just use this as part of my own ongoing consultation. But I guess something that a gap for us, we obviously work very closely with some of the bigger industries, the bigger industry representative groups. It's unsurprising that they have a lot of influence at the federal level. What I'm interested in is, at that local level and going to the local government level, where a lot of practical on the ground investments are made every single day. To what extent do our investment priorities reflect the needs that you have? What other barriers you're experiencing where public investment might be beneficial in de-risking certain things or enabling by creating markets for certain types of products? I'm very interested to hear more about that, if there are views shared here or whether that can be taken offline. But yeah.
Vanessa, I'll give you a quick chance to reply to that one.
It would be really great to take that offline. Matthew, perhaps, with the Greenhouse Gas Alliances, because I think it's an area where we haven't explored it enough, and there's a lot of opportunity there.
Okay, we've got about 4 more minutes left to go. I've got a curly question which I'm wanting each of you to respond to. So beware, and if you've got some time constraints, as I mentioned, we've only got about 4 minutes to go. So we've heard a lot about the role of government and some excellent examples of different organisations that are really making a difference in enabling clean tech industry growth. But we're also acutely aware that there's a groundswell from the bottom up. So how do we get top down, bottom up to meet each other in the middle and get the change that we need to save the planet? So Kate, I might go to you first.
Massive question, Peter. Look, we need to do everything we can because we need to change a lot in the next 10 years. So from a top-down approach, there's lots that can be done through legislation, lots that can be done through the role of government is leading and innovating, having a clear vision, and then thinking carefully about what our role is. So let's help the market innovate and then get out of the way for the market to deliver. From a community perspective, again, lots and lots to be done, and there's lots of amazing groundswell stuff happening at a community level. To realise the circular economy is a systems issue. Every single part of the economic activity is impacted, from the way that we share stuff with our neighbours, the way that we move around the streets and travel, the choices that we make every day as individuals will have a massive impact, all the way up to how small businesses operate and the choices small businesses make, where individuals choose to spend our dollar. up through local government and the choices that local government make as to investment priorities, development, goods and services procurement, and then all the way through to state and federal government. We all have a role to play as individuals, as part of the workforce, as families, and it's all those little decisions day to day that are going to take us towards the future that we need, to take us towards a circular economy in Victoria, to unlock the $1 billion of investment that are available to us. It's all there for the taking. Victoria, we've just got to go and get it.
Thanks very much, Kate. I know it was a big question. Vanessa, to you, you're obviously, Darebin is renowned for being pretty progressive and should I say green. So just wondering, you spoke earlier about a very supportive group of councillors. How much of that support is coming from bottom up, and what sort of initiatives have you seen that has been driven by your community?
I think for Darebin, but it's true for all local government, that we're a really important part of the system that Kate talks about, because we have those probably deeper, more long-term relationships with our community because of the nature of our work, and that's a really important part of how we empower the community. So what what's happening for all local governments across Victoria at the moment is they are under the new Local Government Act. We are all developing our community vision, our community plan, our budget, and our 10-year financial plan. And included for the first time is putting a deliberative panel together to help craft the community vision and all of those statutory documents. And I think it's a really exciting and powerful way that you can really make the most of the special relationship that councils have with community and in serving the community.
Great. Now, Ben and Matthew, is a little bit further removed perhaps from community in terms of responding to federal government directions, but still interested in how you might respond to bottom-up type interest in really making this decade count.
I've got a fire alarm in the building. So, I actually couldn't hear that question, unfortunately. I might have to try again in a minute. Sorry.
Right, no problems. We'll go to you, Matthew.
Yes, no worries. No, it is a slightly tricky one, I guess, from our perspective. But this, coming from the federal government, we have two key roles, and one of which is obviously to create markets and address market failures, and the other is as a strategic investor. And from both of those perspectives, I guess what we need to understand is, for those technologies that are mature and competitive, and we're seeing a lot of these in the clean tech space, you can't avoid the commentary and rhetoric, which is all very correct, that clean technology is currently and increasingly more competitive in the market. What we need to understand through bottom-up engagement, I guess, is where are the barriers, where are the failures, and how can we adjust the regulatory environment to make that investment and the rollout easier. So that's one piece in terms of those established mature technologies. What we're really focused on is what's hard. Australia isn't a massive economy, and so it should be relatively straightforward to, over time, understand from a regional, sectoral perspective where it's going to be very, very difficult to get to sort of our net zero emissions, and what the technology needs, what the solution needs are. And that's where we want that really strong engagement to understand, even to a place-based level, what the problem is, and then we can work strategically and together with investors like ARENA, CFC and the CER to think about what those solutions could be. It's not a quick answer, it's not a very quick process. This kind of thing, I think, is going to take time, but we do need to start to develop more of those partnerships so we can come up with strategic investment initiatives and work together a lot more. Anyway.
Right, well, a nice place to finish, Matthew. I'm about to wrap up now, but I'd like to firstly thank everybody for the way that you've contributed, and even got a fire alarm, so what a bonus. You know, I'd like to also encourage each of your organisations to keep an eye out for the Victorian Cleantech cluster, to think about how you might engage with the cluster and its members. There's a lot of really innovative companies that belong to this group, and if you've been privy to any of the pitch sessions, some amazing inventions and commercialisation pathways already being developed by some of our members. So we would like to include you as part of the Victorian Cleantech Cluster family, and please use the Victorian Cleantech Cluster as a way of reaching out to some of the most innovative companies in this space. I'd like to also thank the audience for your patience. I understand we've had upwards of 90 people join this session. Hopefully everybody's found it of interest, and we're going to ask each of you, if you don't mind, to put your email address in the chat section of this platform, so that people that may wish to follow up with you directly can do so. But again, thanks very much for everybody that presented today, particularly you, Kate, for stepping in at the last moment to replace Claire. Please send her our best wishes. Hope she gets well soon, and we look forward to catching up with you all soon in the near future. Thank you.